this episode of Cultivate. Thank you for joining us today. We are excited to join into another conversation. And today I have one of my favorite people with me today. She is a friend. She is incredible. And one perfect way that I like to describe her is that she is the best hype woman anybody can have. If you're having a bad day, just call her. She's going to tell you all the incredible things you need to hear, and you're going to hang up on the call and you're going to think like you are just the greatest thing on earth. And I believe that she has that gift of encouraging people. She's also someone that when I call her, I know that if I ask her for prayer, I can count on her. And she is just so much fun. And so I'm excited to have Brooke, Amanda, AKA Brooke.
AKA Brooke, exactly.
Yeah, so don't get confused, but yeah. Amanda, Brooke, same person. I am excited and honored to have you join on this conversation today. I love you. I appreciate you. And those things I really mean. I was thinking about that the other day, that, you ask people to pray for you. And it's easy to say, yeah, I'll pray for you. But we might not. We might forget. Life is busy. And so one of the things I've done now is that I try to pray for that person right at that moment.
Yes.
But I know that if I tell you to pray for me or to pray for something, I know, like I don't doubt about it, that you are that person. And I thank you for being a great friend and someone that I can just have fun with. And
I'm gonna fight that tear back, girl. You better stop. Thank you so much. As you're saying that, like, you're the hype woman, I was about to be like, I really am. I love this girl. And I do love you. I love you so much. And I think this space that, this little space on the internet that is Cultivate is going to bless so many women. And I'm just so grateful to be here with you today.
And I have to say, part of all of this has been back and forth between you and I. I'm like, okay, Brooke, help me brainstorm this. This is what I have in mind. And, you're good at social media, seeing what's going on. And then we've been going back and forth with topics. What do you think, women need?
To put it plainly, if this was a pirate ship, let's go with me on this vision right here. If this was a pirate ship and you are the captain steering the boat, I'm the guy with the parrot and the telescope scoping out the scene. I got you.
I love it. I'm grateful for that. And it's going to be fun. So today we have a juicy topic.
Yes.
We are going to talk about finding value and worth in things or people outside of God.
Yes.
They don't have to be bad things, right? Sometimes
they're usually not.
They're usually not.
Yeah.
But outside from finding those things in God, I feel like we are open to disappointment. We are open to finding ourselves not fully getting that we need. And I think it starts small, starts young. I think as women, we can all say that we have felt the pressure of being a woman when it comes to our worth and our value. I think since we're very young, we're shown these images, these words spoken over our lives. We've seen the way the world works, and that begins to shape sometimes what we think we need to do, be or do or look like in order to have value and worth. So I wanted to ask you, how has that played out in your life, even as a young girl? Have you felt that pressure? Have you felt like maybe you needed to work up to something, to be this, to be that, in order to feel loved and valued?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, yes, is what we see in the media. A lot of it is the things happening around us in the world. A lot of it is very unspoken as well. Mm-hmm. A lot of it is what we're intaking in our day-to-day lives with our family, with our parents. And so for me, like, my self-worth was very much equated to my physical appearance. Mm-hmm. From a young age, I just was very, very, very aware of my body. Yeah. I'm Puerto Rican, so it's my family calls me flaca, and it's out of a term of endearment, and it's so much love since I was a little girl. I mean, I was teeny tiny, and I always had been my whole life. And so that was supposed to be a love of endearment, and it kind of felt like shackles for most of my life. Because when I looked in the mirror, I hated what I saw. And then you go to school and kids make sure you know what they see in you too. Yeah. So they become the worst kind of mirror. And kids in school are like looking at yourself in a funhouse mirror. Sure, that's you, but that's a distorted image of you, because boys let it be known that I was skinny and I didn't have a body and there was all these things wrong with me. And I would take that home and go and look in the mirror, and I thought I was horrific. Like middle school was the worst for me. Elementary and middle was like just the peak of my insecurity years I can remember. And it's so hard to like look at that now. Like I'm 31 and I have a daughter now, and I'm going to do everything in my power that my daughter will never have to go to the lengths that I went to, or maybe not even the lengths, but the rabbit holes I would go down of insecurity and hating myself, when all the while the Lord was always so pleased in me. And it just took me a really, really long time to make that make sense in my heart. I knew it, and I have an amazing mother who spoke love and spoke truth over my life, but that doesn't mean it always connected. And so I had to start entering adulthood for that to make sense in my mind.
And I think that's the hard part, is that there's conflicting information.
Yeah.
So what you see and what you feel is not what your mom, and you're going to think, oh, this is my mom. Oh, moms think their kids are cute and whatever, right? But there's a sense of value, worth, and of truth that comes from what she says about you.
Yeah.
Yet there's all these other people who don't carry that same weight, but yet what they say seems to matter in a sense, make more sense than what this person has to say. And it makes me think of the same thing with God. Like God can't say, you're perfectly made in my image, you're this, you're that. And we hear that
we read all the verses.
Yep. We've read them all and we're like, yeah, I'm beautifully, perfectly made, but I don't feel perfect and I don't feel beautiful.
Yep.
And I don't think you took your time. And I don't think you took me into consideration of what I wanted to look like or whatever. And so it's navigating the how I feel versus the truth and reality of what I know, but how do I make them connect?
Yeah. And for me, like those verses that we were just talking about, I read them my whole life. And they were nice things, but I don't know if it's ever happened to you that you could read a verse your whole life and it sounds great and whatever. Yeah. And just one day, it's as if the words came popping off the page. And that's what happened to me one day at 18. My now husband, Adam,
up until now, you've carried this thing with you of like the way you look, you're not confident about the way you look, and maybe somebody looked at you and called you skinny, flaca, and it was out of a compliment, but now it wasn't for you.
Yeah.
So up until that point, you've been dealing with that.
I think at like 15 or 16, I started to regain my power. Like, I started to keep up with the boys. So all the, jokes and stuff they made, suddenly I reclaimed that. And it didn't start to affect me as much once I realized how I could flip the script and not let people talk to me which way they felt like it. Now I was like, wait a minute, I have the confidence to speak back. So once I knew I could speak back, I started speaking back. So 15, 16, I started to gather that. And then 17, I met my husband. We started dating. At 18, we broke up for like 2 months or something. And my world was crushed. My world was absolutely crushed. And I couldn't make sense of how I looked and how I felt about myself, because the boy that told me that I was so beautiful and just made me feel so special and amazing, he wasn't there to say those things to me anymore. And I remember looking at myself in the mirror, and that little girl was back again. Like I couldn't see myself physically for how the Lord sees me.
Yeah.
And then one day, in the thick of it, in the thick of a breakup, it's the middle of the night, and I'm just trying to do something to like encourage my soul because I am down and out. And I read, "You are fearfully and wonderfully made." And for the first time, that verse took on like a whole new meaning for me in a way that it never had before. And I just felt so anchored in that verse. God just gave me a foundation to stand on. And my perspective from then and there changed. And so I think from that point onward, and now as an adult, like, well, we could talk about what motherhood has done for my confidence. But all in all, like from that point moving forward, like I really could grasp like how the Lord felt about me and put how I looked at myself physically. I could put it to that verse and be like, okay. And then from then on, I think that insecurity thing wasn't an issue for me anymore.
So it was almost as if that finally made sense supernaturally, because like you said, you've been reading that.
Yeah.
And then did you never struggle with that anymore? Or would you say you might have had thoughts, but they were never as strong as they would have been before?
I think I had thoughts, but from that point onward, I knew how to brush them off or confront them with the truth. Whereas before, I mean, I was painfully insecure growing up. I mean, painfully. Like, it was really deep. I got to really low places. And so I think once you've hit a low place in your life before and you're able to get out of it, and it wasn't by my own strength, you know, the Lord took me from the pit that I was in at 16. But once you reach a low place, you know that you never want to go back there again.
Yeah.
So for me, once that verse became truth and really had life in my life, no, I never went back to that place again, because I never wanted to go back to that place again.
And it makes me think, if that was your journey, you grew up in church, you grew up with a Christian family, you grew up with the best support system around you.
Yeah.
It makes me think about the people who don't have that or didn't have that. How much more difficult is it for some people to navigate those same feelings without knowing there's a truth, without knowing that there's something beyond what my mom can say, beyond what a friend could say, but that there's this overarching truth over my life. And so I think of all the people and all the women that have to go through this, really just being shaped by someone else's idea.
Yeah. I think we have to make a choice. I think ultimately I had a mother who spoke truth over me. I had boys in school who spoke lies over me. And then I had what I was choosing to make sense for me. And so ultimately, whether you have that voice that's speaking truth over you or not, which I hope everybody does, community is so important to take us out of our own heads sometimes, because we can be in our own heads sometimes as women. And so, but if you don't have that, and all you have is your voice, then I think it's important that you take a step back and you say, what am I speaking over myself?
Yes.
What am I choosing to believe about myself? Physically write it down. Write it down if you have to, because then you can start to visualize the thoughts and put them to paper. And when you look at them on paper, the reality can really strike you, because then once you have to write them down, now you're confronting something. Yeah. Now you're looking at it for what it is in black and white. And so that's when you can say, how real is that? What was that just a fleeting thought? Where did that thought come from? Where did it stem from? Did I hear that one time? I think you can approach and attack it differently when it's right in your face and not just something wandering around in your head. If you could physically write it down and look at it and say, okay, how much truth, how much validity is it to what I'm saying about myself? Okay, we can do something with that. We can do something with that. And that's for the believer or non-believer alike.
Yeah. I love that, because it makes me think of having a moment where I go back to the source of where these things are coming from. Where is that doubt? Where is that idea that I'm not enough, that I'm not good enough, that my looks are not good enough, whatever the case might be? Where is it coming from, right? What are the sources? Like, is it valid sources? Is it just an opinion? Yeah. And I feel like nowadays, more than ever, we are bombarded with images, ideas, and thoughts constantly in our faces. Like, I can think when I was a little girl, skinny girls were in. And then I'm a teenager and I'm 12, 13, and I'm a stick. And then now big butts are in style. And why don't I have a big butt?
Girl,
like, why don't I look like this person? And then now it's this, and it's almost like these trends, and you can't keep up with these things. But it's the idea that there's all these other things working against who you are.
Yeah.
But what is the validity of these people? Who are these people?
But also,
I don't know.
It's like now our culture's going, it's reversing itself, because a couple years ago, like BBLs were in and a certain figure was in, and like whatever. And now we're going back to like 2000s model-esque body stature. And I'm just like, we need to decide. we need to wake up and decide, because the culture is always changing its mind. So we need to decide how we want to move forward about how we feel about ourselves. Because come the day of tomorrow, fine. So let's flop then. Let's go with the Model-esque thing that culture's saying that we now need to look like, and give it 2 years and they're going to flip back again.
Absolutely.
So are you going to hate yourself in 2 years from now because you're stuck on the trends from 2 years prior? Like, we need to decide how we're going to feel about ourselves and not let culture tell us.
You need to learn to be happy in your own skin, whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And find ways to just be grateful.
Yeah.
And live with it and make it the best, and realize the value that is on you, not just by what you look like, because there is a certain thing that you do want to look good. You want to feel good about yourself. You want to look at yourself in the mirror and be happy with what, absolutely.
Yeah.
But beyond that is going back to the root of it. Where is your idea? Where is your baseline coming from?
Yeah.
You know, is it from a healthy place? Is it from God? Or is it just because it's the new trend? It's the new thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard as women, because like you were saying, it changes all the time. And it's like, we can't keep up, and we can't easily get wrapped up in this that we forget the other things about life that matter so much more than this. There will be someone that's going to love you exactly for who you are.
Yep.
With your imperfections, with your good things, bad things. Striving for this perfection is not realistic, but knowing that there is someone, and when we talk about relationship setting, that's going to love you with all those things.
Yep.
And so there's no need to try to mold yourself to find that, because one, you are already loved by God.
Yeah.
And two, he has a person for you that's gonna, and I'm not even gonna get into the details, but we've laughed about these things.
I was gonna say, I can get into it real quick, because shout out to my husband when he was my boyfriend. Because when he was my boyfriend, that's when I was the skinny, tiny, teeny thing, and he made me feel like I was voluptuous. Okay, and then when he is my husband. Now I'm a mother of 2. My body has changed. I'm not that 18-year-old girl, skinny. You know, I got some meat on my bones, and he loves me even more. So it's like, it's true that when you have a good man, he's going to make you feel good no matter the season, because that's just genuinely how he loves you. He loves you in all seasons of life. Yes. But then there's the flip side of that, which can be its own thing, in that I love my husband for how he lifts me up and how he loves me exactly as I am. But I've also found myself in unhealthy places of needing that validation and then placing it over the Lord's. And so it's a double-edged sword.
Yes, yes. Would you say that you ever found yourself in that place where it's like, I'm more concerned about getting my needs met or my validation from this source than from God?
100%.
Even in your relationship?
100%. And it happened accidentally. It happened unknowingly. Like, you know, we believe in family. We believe in marriages. God is for family and marriages. And so, you know, that relationship is so important to me. And it's the utmost priority, my husband and I. Mm-hmm. But in caring for something in a what I think is a healthy way of caring for it, or prioritizing something that the Lord told me was important, I got lost in that. I don't know how. And like, I would realize in the midst of, or the aftermath of arguments, if I wasn't hearing a certain thing from him, or if he wasn't giving me, you know, affirmation in a certain way verbally, that I was just feeling really empty without it. Like, I was just feeling like, wow, like lacking in my marriage, because he was not validating me in the way that I needed to hear him do it. And so it would make me feel less than, not because of him, you know, being a bad partner, not because he's a bad man. I was placing expectations that only the Lord could fill, but I wasn't picking up on that in the moment.
Yeah. So it can happen, like you said, you're not even doing that on purpose. It just happens if we're not aware of those things. And it happens with relationships, and we're talking a lot about looks and stuff, but I feel that it also happens in many different areas. So for example, women who are, and there's nothing wrong with having a career and wanting to be successful in whatever field you're into. But sometimes you also look for worth and value in that, in the title and the achievements, in not just in relationships, not in just being told you're pretty, but in being told you're capable and feeling like you're capable and you could do things and you can. Because I feel like personally, I would say I'm less on the side of needing to hear that from Alex or just in general. I am more in the sense that I can easily place not my value per se, maybe my importance. Value. Yes, like what determines how good I am and can be is in what I do.
Yeah.
And what I put forward. And I've talked about this before, even being a little bit of a perfectionist in a sense, is that I need to make sure that whatever I do is good enough.
Yeah.
To whose standards? My head, my mind, whatever I decide in the moment.
And you see, there's so much good with that because you're operating from a spirit of excellence. And then there's that you gotta be real careful because you hit that sharp curve and now we're on to something else.
Like wanting that reassurance from your husband is not a bad thing. Is when it becomes that one thing. Wanting to be excellent in everything you do is not a bad thing. Is when it becomes that one thing.
Exactly.
And I think it's finding the root of where that desire is coming from. Meaning, it's finding the root of what you need that validation from him and not from God. Mm-hmm. Is why now you're running more towards him for specific things than to God. And not that there's anything wrong with wanting to feel loved by your husband.
No.
It's finding out why I need to do and produce and achieve and make things happen to feel value, right?
But I will say that I didn't just come to this conclusion on my own. I didn't just have an epiphany because I'm just so smart. The Holy Spirit told me so. He made it very, very clear and spoke to me very specifically one day. And I will say that you're not going to have this revelation if you're not in being intentional in your walk with God. Because I wasn't near the Lord. I wasn't pursuing him in a specific way so that I could hear his voice. And I think that's why I was leaning so deeply on my husband's validation. Whereas when I was seeking him more specifically, I created the space to be able to hear him tell me, since when did you place your worth in your husband and not me? And that was like a kick to the gut. And just, I sobbed. And wow. I just like, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm sorry.
So it makes me think that, as you say that, the importance of making sure that God's voice is so much louder than every other voice. Yeah. And that only happens through relationship, through discipline, because it's not enough to know God.
Yeah.
There's plenty of people who go to church, they know God. You can say they have a relationship with God, but it's in the seeking God and making that room for him to speak to you. Because you could have gone on about your life and never really consider these things because if you wouldn't have given God room to speak. And so it's habits and practices that we need to maintain, that we talk about it all the time at church. Read your Bible, have prayer, spend time with God.
And I was actively going to church at this time.
Right.
I was not.
You're doing the right thing.
Yeah. I was not a Christian or not, no, I was actively in relationship with the Lord at this time, but just not opening my Bible the way I should.
Yeah.
And not praying the way I should. And for whatever reason.
Yeah. Because life happens. And we have all found ourselves in that place.
Correct. So for whatever the reason, I was distant from those things and I found myself in that place.
So it matters that when we talk about these things, read your Bible, pray. It doesn't mean that you have to pray every day at the same time for an hour. Yeah. But even when we were talking about a few Sundays ago, that you need to have communication with God. Yeah. You need to pray. You need to create room for God to speak to you because it is only in those moments that his voice is going to come and check you or remind you or tell you, what you're doing, why are you doing this, why are you seeking this and that. And I would say it matters that we look at our own lives, and many times those things are rooted in, they can be rooted in different things. I can think of girls who've had situations with their fathers that have dictated how they view themselves,
Yeah.
their view on life. There are girls who maybe have been told by, maybe you had your father and your mom, but you have been told certain things and you begin to believe those things. I think in my own life, maybe it wasn't necessarily, not that I didn't struggle with my looks, but for me, it was more so of being successful, because I knew that that's what my dad always wanted me to be. It was important to be somebody and to be successful. But beyond that, it was realizing that after I was in a relationship with my dad, and after my dad just completely, X'd me out of his life, then it became a thing of him thinking I couldn't be these things without him. And it's like, oh no, I am, And both have a good thing in a sense, a survivor sense to it, but they're rooted in the wrong thing. Yeah. They're not necessarily the wrong thing. It's good to be successful. It's good to put your best out there. But why? And is your value and your worth depending only on that?
Yeah.
And that's a journey we have to be willing to walk on and be honest with ourselves. So I think that there might be women watching right now that they find themselves agreeing with what we're saying. And it's like, okay, but how do I go from here? Well, sit down and have a conversation with yourself and examine your life and examine what are you intaking? Right.
What are you intaking regularly? What are you hearing regularly? Whose voices are the loudest in your life?
Yes.
And what does that mean to you actually? Because it could be someone amazing and they could be speaking truth and life over you, which I hope they are, because that is the kind of people you need around you. But how important is that voice? Is that voice the loudest voice above them all? We have to ask ourselves that. And if you ask yourself and you genuinely don't know, you cannot differentiate for yourself, then ask the Holy Spirit to reveal it to you.
Yeah.
Ask God for wisdom. When we ask him for wisdom, he will give it to us.
Absolutely.
And the Holy Spirit will be able to interpret and clarify all of those feelings that we can't seem to clarify ourselves. You know how many times I've had to ask the Lord to make sense to me? Because I sure don't make sense to me.
I don't understand. I don't get me.
But I know you get me, Lord.
Yeah.
Help me make sense of that. Search my heart.
Yes.
Search my heart.
And those prayers are valid and they're needed. Is that we don't have to come to God with a perfect scenario, with the perfect words, but it's come as you are, because it is in those moments that he will be faithful to show you. And he's not afraid of our situation, of our tantrums, or, I don't know what I'm doing and whatever. He's not.
Let me just say that changed my prayer life. When I made full awareness, because the Lord made awareness to me through his word, that I could approach him confidently exactly as I am, that changed my prayer life. There was no trying to be perfect or say the right words or say anything. If you would hear some of my prayers, you would laugh. You would laugh how I talk to God. But I talk to God on the realest level. Why? Because he already knows.
Yes.
I don't need to beat around the bush. If you already know, that's half the battle right there. I don't have to work it up to you and kind of present it, because I don't know. It's happened to me.
You know before I even say it.
It's happened to me. If you're in trouble, maybe you're gonna want to word something the right way so that it lands a little nicer. I don't have to land something nice to God. I come exactly as it is before him, and that has changed everything.
Yeah. I see so many people struggling with prayer in that sense, that because maybe you don't have a background with, church and God or whatever, you maybe never even been around people that pray. So it's a foreign thing to you. This conversation with God, it's a foreign thing to them. Yeah. It's almost like approaching God as, yes, he is holy, but it has to go like this, and it has to be structured like this, and it's a scary God, or I don't know how much I can say. And then being able to be told, you talk to God as your, and here's a problem, as your father, but some people don't know that. Yeah. Some people don't know what that looks like. It's speaking to God as someone who loves you, who wants to hear from you, who isn't afraid of your prayer. I was thinking about this the other day. I was praying about something, and I had that thought of God, you know how I feel and what I'm about to say. So why try to make my prayer sound nicer?
Well, you just said sometimes, if you don't have a father, then you're not going to relate to God and a father. But you said that, and in my mind, I went, I don't even talk to my father the way I talk to God. I definitely don't. I definitely talk to my dad in a more
polished manner.
Polished with a ribbon on it. You know what I'm saying? Like, I still very much approach my dad like that at 31. So I definitely don't talk to my dad the way I talk to God. And I talk to God deeper than a best friend. Because even with a best friend, I don't know what your relationships with your best friends look like. I don't know. But all I know is I come to God deeper than that. Mm-hmm. But maybe if you could want to put a label on it, maybe it's the best friend. Talk to God like your best friend, because you know when something goes down, you have your best friend on speed dial. She's on your favorites list on your iPhone.
Absolutely.
You just click that button, and when she answers, you just letting her have it. Mm-hmm. Do the same with God.
Yes,
just
I love that.
Let him have it. There is nothing that you can say that he is not prepared for, that you're going to knock him off his feet about, that he's going to be shocked. You did that? He knew. He saw. He was there.
Yeah.
Let's just talk to God from that perspective you already know. So, Lord, here's everything I feel.
If that you don't have a person that you've ever experienced being able to do that with, this is it. Yeah. This is him. He's not going to be shocked. You can literally say things as you think them, and it's going to be okay. It is a safe place. It is a safe space, and it creates now this opportunity for growth. And the more room you make in that relationship, the more space you're creating for him to speak to you.
I'm so grateful for that.
And it's something that you have to, like, I don't want to say practice, but kind of build up to. Yeah. Because it's not like, some people are like, oh, I pray, but I don't hear God. It's like, well, but it's like a relationship. You have to get to know someone. You're building this relationship that goes both ways, but it requires time. It requires attention. Yeah. It requires intentionality. But we treat God sometimes worse than we would treat like our friends. Sometimes we have more time for our friends, for this, for that. And God is like the last one in the picture. Yeah. And it's like, no, you're going to get as much as you're willing to put in as well.
And I think if you know at the forefront of your mind that God is going to be that safe space, God is going to be the one that you can tell anything and everything to, because he loves you and he cares for you. And if you already have the fact that you can comfortably and confidently approach God, I think it'll start to change when you approach God. Mm-hmm. God will stop being the last resort. God will stop being that you called your mom, your sister, and your best friend first, and then you told God after. It'll start to change that, and you'll start telling God everything first. And that's my prayer for women, that God would be your first line of defense and not your last resort when it comes to anything in your life, because he loves you.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. And so when we think practically about women who right now may be finding themselves in a situation, in a place where they are not confident about themselves, where they are seeking for validation, love, acceptance, and things outside of God. Not necessarily bad things, like we said, just things outside of God that will never give you exactly what you need. How can we practically help them when perhaps they don't have the background you have, and the support and the family and the knowledge of God? And they maybe are new to church. Maybe they've never heard about this concept of God being this, father, this good father that cares for you. How can we practically, you would say, help them today to start on that journey towards a place where they can get this from God?
First thing you need to know about God is that he's consistent, and people are fickle, and culture is fickle, and seasons change, and God is the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. And so if you know that how he feels about you, no matter what you do, will be the same. He was pleased with you yesterday, and he's pleased with you today. And however you see yourself, know that God can make sense of it and reveal truth to your heart if it is just completely full of lies because the world told it to you, and you told it to yourself, and you made it concrete in your heart, and you made it so. God can totally knock all of that down and reveal the truth to you if you let him in. And so intentionality, seeking him in a very specific way, as often as you can do it, try for daily. But if you can't, just seek him intentionally, and he will not leave you hanging. I can promise you that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it's important to surround ourselves with people who can speak into our lives and who can check on us and have the ability to point things to us when we're not seeing them for what they are.
Yeah.
You know, having that community where it's like, okay, I think you need to pay attention to this. Hey, I think. And in this world full of noise and full of voices, is being okay also with finding yourself being different than everything you see around you. I think we've been so used to, I think right now we look around us and I feel like we just see copies of the same person over and over and over and over again. And people dying to look the same way and to have the same things and to be this and to be that. And then I think to myself,
can even be that way in Christian culture.
Like, yes, everywhere, because there's an innate desire that humans have to belong, to be, to have worth. Like, that's given to us by God. And so we all have that. And then I think to myself, when did that become like the thing to do? Like, I look around me and it's like, how boring. Like, I don't want to be one more.
Yeah.
Like, there's a reason why you don't fit the mold, because you weren't supposed to, because there's something so special and particular about you. And like, what about letting that shine? What about letting that weirdness shine? You know, what about letting that little thing about you that maybe you struggle with shine, because that's just the way that you are.
Absolutely.
And like, don't blend in. You weren't meant to blend in with the rest of the people, but you were meant to stand out. And it's hard, I think, to sometimes find yourself there. I would say for me, specifically when it comes to that, in different ways, I think even in church, you know, when Alex and I were youth pastors, and I've talked about this in the past, it was feeling that I needed to be this person to fit this description of what the youth pastor's wife was, of what I need to do, of how I need to do it.
That's an episode in and of itself.
Yeah, and it's hard. Yes, and it's hard because what about when your heart is right, but you can't turn into a person you are not?
Yeah.
And it's a process to begin to embrace your uniqueness. So begin to embrace the fact that I am not like the funniest person on stage, for example, or the fact that I could be a little bit more rough around the edges, but finding my place in that, like realizing that this is actually exactly who I need to be. You know what I mean?
Can I say you found your place and kicked the door wide open? That's exactly what you did. I'm grateful that you said, I don't want to be cookie cutter and I don't want to fit in and I don't want to do all the things, because my life is significantly better because of your voice. I don't even think you know.
Thank you.
So I'm very grateful that you chose not to follow the stereotypical mold, whatever that may look like, because I'm better for it.
And it's still a struggle, I feel like, sometimes, because you wonder sometimes about yourself, like, is this right? Should I, you know? And you have to go back to a place where it's like...
And social media has made it that you can compare yourself to other pastors.
Of course. Or to people in general.
Yeah.
Like, just to, you know, not just in being a pastor, but in life in general.
Yeah.
And so I would say one of the things that also I think has helped me and can help people is that you have to define what it is that you want your life to look like, who it is that you want to be, defined by God and by you, not by outside sources. And then surround yourself with that. And then block voices that make you feel otherwise.
Yeah.
There's so many voices out there. There's so many opinions. And so even with something as simple as Instagram, I'm very particular with what I see, who I follow, where I go. It's like, if there's something or someone that makes me, I don't engage in it. I don't need to be part of this or that. Like, I'm just mindful of those things. And I think that will make a difference. I think there's probably women watching that. Maybe you need to change your circle of friends. Maybe it's the people around you that have added to that. Maybe it's God calling you out of a relationship. Maybe it's God calling you out of friendships. Maybe it's God calling you out of a place, people around you, to begin to do that in your life. Because again, if that's all we hear all the time, it's going to be even harder to hear what God has to say.
Yeah. And earlier you were talking about making sure that you're getting around people who are speaking certain things into your life. And I would say that if you don't have that group as of yet, find one person.
Yes.
Find the one person that will hold you accountable, that will speak that life over you, that will speak truth over you, and that you know that you can turn to about this specific issue, about you seeking validation in the wrong places or not being able to distinguish what your worth is. Find that one person and your life is going to do a 180 alone, you know?
Yes, absolutely. So as we wrap up and time has flown, time flies when you're having fun.
Always.
We got to do a part 2 of this. But one last thought that you have on this topic for anybody that's watching right now, as we're finishing up, what would you say?
Yeah. You were talking earlier about defining, you know, what your life looks like, and just know not to put pressure on yourself. I remember putting a lot of pressure on myself in high school when I was trying to figure out what my purpose was in life and what God wanted of me. I didn't know. I didn't have a clear path for life after high school. And that seems so vast, thinking about life after high school. But no matter what your age is, just know that as you continue seeking God, He will go on defining what your path looks like. So don't feel so pressured or worried about how you need to define it. As long as you're walking with the Lord, He will go on defining things for you. He will go on providing clarity for you. Make it an everyday something intentional, a 5-minute prayer. Maybe today, I don't know, maybe today you're going to not listen to that certain genre of music you love. You're going to throw some worship on, which is not your norm. You usually drive to work and you only listen to this type of music. Okay, fine. Now we're going to listen to worship. Maybe you have no Christian podcast that you listen to. No one speaking some practical life tools over your life. Okay, I'm going to throw in Cultivate's new episode this week and see what Diana's saying. And you know, whatever it is, let it be something intentional in how you're seeking the Lord daily, and watch how your life is going to change.
Yes, I love that. Thank you for joining me on this fun conversation.
Thank you.
And we're gonna have you again for more juicy. That should be like a series, juicy conversations.
I'm into it. Let's do it.
And thank you for joining us today. And I hope that you were encouraged with this conversation. And you may find yourself right now dealing with something like this, going through it. Just questioning yourself and wondering about your future and about your worth and your value. I just wanted you to be encouraged today to know that in God you're more than enough, and to know that there are practical ways that you can work towards finding who you are, your worth, your value. And so if you need prayer, if you want to just tell us a little bit more, maybe we can connect you to community. If you're in the Miami area or wherever it is that you are, you can write it on the comments, send us a DM, whatever it is, in whichever capacity we can serve you. We want to do that and remind you that you are loved and you're valued. We love you, and we'll see you on the next episode.